Hello, this is Bonnie Bear, and this is the Chapter 1 test correction for the version even. So number 1 is a multiple choice, so it's write a function that represents the parent function y equals x squared after it has been translated 3 up and 2 right. So when they say 3 up and 2 right, they're pretty much telling you the vertex. So you would use the vertex form, which is right here. And you know that the h right here is also known as x and the k is also known as y. So if you put it in this format, then all you have to do is plug it into that equation, into the x and that one into the y. So that would give you b. Now for number 2, it says given the functions f of x equals x cubed minus 81x and g of x equals x plus 9, determine the simplified equation for the combined function y equals f of x over g of x. So all you have to do here is put it like this, and from here you just simplify. So x cubed divided by x, that will give you x squared, and negative 81x over 9, that would give you negative 9x. And from there you could simplify it further on. You could factor out an x, and that will give you x parentheses x minus 9, and that answer is B. For number 3, it says let f of x be 3x to the 4th power minus x squared plus 8x over 5x cubed minus 2x squared plus 3x. And it says find any horizontal asymptote of the graph of f. So here you have to find the highest degree, and that would be these two right here, 4 over 3. And knowing the rules, you know that if the top one is bigger than the bottom one, then that gives you no horizontal asymptote, and so that's why it's D as in dog.
Thanks, Bonnie Bear. Let's go over questions 4. Match the graph by writing the appropriate basic function in the first blank and then the equation of blank. So they want the function name. So graph number 1, this is a bucket starting at 1 and ends at 1. That's a cosine, so I always like to say C, and that looks like a cosine. F of x equals cos x would be your function. Number 2, graph number 2 covered right here. Parabola opening U, that's quadratic. F of x equals x squared or y equals x squared. 4C, graph number 3, looking up here, you'll notice it has limits and boundaries there and asymptote, so it stops there, and you'll notice it goes between there. I call that a logistic function. Your equation is 1 over 1 plus e to the negative x. And then number 4 is a rational or reciprocal function. F of x equals 1 over x, this one. Question number 5, which of the following has an inverse? So to do this problem, if I made a little chart here, if you take the absolute value, which looks like this, it passes the vertical line test, right? It only goes through 1 point. But then when I turn it horizontally, it fails the horizontal line test, which means you can't take the inverse. And this one is quadratic. Here's my basic graph. You'll notice that it passes the vertical line test, but again, fails the horizontal line test, therefore you can't take the inverse. C, each of x looks like this rational function. You guys are allowed to use your graphing calculators on this one. You'll notice that it passes the vertical line test but fails the horizontal line test, and then the only one that actually passes the both vertical and horizontal line test is quantity x minus 4 to the 3rd power. So a cubic function passes and then also passes. That side was worth 26 points. Backside. Make sure to show all your work and box your answers given f of x equals 3x plus 1 and g of x equals 3x minus 2. You're supposed to add the two functions. So if you add the two functions, you can do a couple of things. You can add them with just the variables. So that would give you 6x plus or 6x minus 1. Or you can actually just substitute in 2 for every x value, then combine them. That gives me 6 plus 1. And here you're adding because there's a plus right there. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then if you combine all those, you get 11. So I gave you 3 points for that one, and then this one here, find the domain of this. So if I look at my restrictions or my domain for f of x and g of x, notice how these are linears because it's the power of 1. Therefore, it's negative infinity to positive infinity, so there is no restrictive domain there. Number 6 says find f divided by g. So you have this expression, all you have to do is 3x plus 1, do your substitutions for f, and then your substitution for g, and you have this, okay? I gave you partial credit if you did something like crossing off or trying to simplify. You can't simplify those because there you have, these are plus and minus. They would have to be multiplication in order to cancel. Well, you also need to include, you got a point marked off if you did not show me, if you did not set 3x minus 2 not equal to 0, because remember, if you put in there, there's a number in there if you put it in, which is 2/3. If you put 2/3 in there, you have 0. So any number divided by 0 is undefined. So you had to include x is not equal to 2/3. Question 6D says find the domain of f divided by g. So if you did that, you realize that you could pick any number except for 2/3. So here is my interval notation that shows me you can pick any number except for 2/3. Question number 7. Use the quadratic formula to solve, express your solutions in simplified, exact, and decimal forms if possible. So you realize you can't factor that, and I want the quadratic formula. Write down the quadratic formula, you get 2 points for just writing the correct one. A lot of students who are missing that, just always write down the formula first so you can see the substitutions. So every time I do a substitution, I'm putting in parentheses. Your b value there is positive 4. B value is negative, that should be a positive 4. And then your a value is 1, c value is 5, and a value is 1. So opposite of 4 is negative 4. Positive 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times 1 times 5 is negative 20. 16 minus 20 is negative 4. The square root of negative 4, remember this is just negative 1 times 4, so the square root of negative 1 is your I, and the square root of 4 is 2. That comes out. Then you take out the GCF of the numerator, GCF of the denominator, you're canceling your 2's there, and you're left with negative 2 plus or minus I. Question number 8, extra credit. What was my first job? That was working at the library. And then for the other version, how many years I've been teaching? That's 13 years. Question 9a, graph the piecewise function. So I have x squared, x is less than 0, so x is less than 0 here at 0, x is equal to 0. And then less than means to the left side, right? And then x squared, so I was very, very particular that your graph should actually be pretty accurate. So left 1, up 1, left 2, up 4. So you should be going through those points. You may have been deducted points for that. In blue, it says f of x equals 2, or y equals 2. That means all my y values are 2. You make up your x values, and you'll graph a horizontal line. That means I'm going to have closed circles at both of these. And it's only between the numbers 0 and 3, including 0 and 3. And the last one here, 4 minus x. If that confused you, you can rewrite it, negative x plus 4. So you go to 4. And then you have a slope here of negative 1 over 1. So you can go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. And notice how you're starting at values that are greater than 3. So open circle and continuing on, and there's your graph. That was out of 4 points. Question 9b, is it continuous or discontinuous? If discontinuous, what type? It is a discontinuous jump. You have to have both of those in order to get the full point. And the last question, graph the function, make sure to include the asymptotes. So again, if you just put that graph, the rational function, onto your, and you didn't use your calculator, I gave you guys 2 points. And if you zoomed out, you realize that there is actually something over here as well. To find the horizontal asymptote, you're going to look at your exponents, your highest ones. So I have a 2 and a 2. Because they're equal, you just simplify that. These will cancel, and you're left with negative 3. Y equals negative 3. Here is my horizontal asymptote in red. Vertical asymptote, I'm going to set it not equal to 0, so you're going to take everything in the denominator, set it not equal to 0, factor it, solve, and you can't have these values, right? Because if you put those back in, it would equal 0. So you have a vertical asymptote at negative 8 and positive 2. and then you can use your calculator to actually graph the rest of those. You got a -1 if you were missing the graph here in quadrant 3, so big mistake of students. And the last problem says find the domain of question number 10A above. So they wanted the domain going from left to right, so I can pick negative numbers. Basically I can't pick -8 and I can't pick 2. So the parentheses is showing that you don't include those values, right? At not -8, not at 2. I give you 1 point correct if you got any of those right, and then total was out of 21 points, and then the total was out of 47. Hopefully that was helpful for your test corrections.